Hello, hello, and welcome back finally to another installment in the short team recap series. I had a little bit of a family issue that kept me out of the game for a little bit. Obviously unforeseen, but thankfully, through God's wing, seems to be smooth now. So time to get back into the grind and lock in. I cannot even remember when the last time was I took this big of a break unintentionally. So, anyways, that's out of the way. We are back, and today we're doing the New Orleans Saints. I got my copious notes here, as you can see. So, yeah, man, I'm excited. Let's get right back into it. So, talking about the Saints, it was a complete disaster. They started the season off 2-0, and in that two-game stretch, they looked fantastic. They whooped the Panthers at home in game one. And then in game two, they destroyed the Cowboys on the road, I think. So really just an amazing opening stretch for the Saints. Everybody was high on them. I mean, and it's hard. I mean, maybe you shouldn't be picking potential Super Bowl teams 2 weeks into the season, but they were playing that good, especially offensively. They looked flawless. Um, and so what happened was injuries really just ravaged the Saints. And listen, I usually am not the guy who brings up injuries as kind of a, I don't think you cannot tell the entire story of a season based off one certain thing, and injuries is included in that. However, if I was to give any team a pass due to injury, it would be the Saints this year. I mean, they started off 2-0, finished what, 5-12, which is, by the way, their worst record since 2005. 2005. It has been what, 18 years where the Saints have won at least 7 games. A lot of those years, they were either Super Bowl contenders or winning Super Bowls. So I mean, yeah, it's a historic low point for the Saints. Obviously, had to fire head coach Dennis Allen mid-season. I mean, there was just no light at the end of the tunnel with him as the head coach. And honestly, if we look at where the Saints are currently, we're really talking about a team in one of the worst situations in the NFL. I still give that title to the Browns undisputably. I mean, we're talking about a team who's pretty much given up a fourth of their salary cap to somebody who doesn't play. So I mean that's just an all-time level handicap. But in terms of the NFC, the Saints really might be down there in terms of like just screwed beyond belief. So let's talk about their season as a whole, really. And first off, let's talk about the injuries. Like I said earlier, first off, you have starting quarterback Derek Carr missed 7 games, only played in 10 of them. Went five. By the way, he went 5-5 as a starter. Okay, and I don't even know if that includes games where he started and finished, but 5-5 as a starter. If you can't put two and two together, they went 0-7 without Derek Carr. And that's not to shit on Spencer Rattler, the young guy, but he did not look good at all when he was in there. But that's also not to blame entirely on him because Alvin Kamara, he missed 3 games. I believe that was their final 3 games. I don't know if they were resting him or not. He had a really good season, by the way. When I do my bounce back video talking about players who had a tremendous season kind of out the blue, Alvin Kamara is going to be on that list because he kind of revived his career in a sense. But he missed 3 games. Chris Olave, star receiver, Chris Olave played 8 out of 17 games. Rashid Shaheed, who got off to an amazing start to the season, played 6 out of 17 games. So you got your starting quarterback missing 7 games, your star running back missing 3 games, your star receiver missing what, 9 games, and then your deep threat Rashid Shaheed missing 11 games. So I just named you their 4 most important offensive weapons slash players. So I mean they're pretty much handicapped right off the bat there. And by the end of the season, I believe their receiving core was Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who, by the way, had a pretty solid season, all things considered, but a guy they brought off the streets to play for them. Um, I believe it was Dante Pettis, another guy who was not on the roster to start the season, and then you got Cedric Wilson, I believe, or was it Kevin Austin? All of those guys were getting big time reps at the end of the season. And by the way, you had a rookie quarterback playing without Alvin Kamara. So the Saints completely gave up with about a month left in the season. And they put together some terrible football down the stretch there. So fired their coach, a joke of a team the second half of the season. And where do they go from here, right? We're trying to look at ways the Saints can rapidly improve their roster. I don't see it. Um, let's talk about the quarterback situation. Derek Carr at quarterback. What do I think about him? Well, I think, to put it bluntly, he's one of the most overhated quarterbacks in the NFL. I think, I mean, let's just look at it like this. 2 years he's played there, right? He's gone 14 and 13 as the starter with not a lot of help or stability around him, might I add. A 40-13 touchdown to interception ratio. I guarantee you, if they can give him a healthy offense, this guy will absolutely cook on the Saints. I'm not saying he's a top 10 quarterback. I'm saying he's one of these guys, like a Kirk Cousins type, or what's another guy in this type of bracket? A Baker Mayfield type, where if you put the right pieces around him, he can play his ass off. And at this point in time, would you rather have? Is there a single quarterback on the market or in the draft? Well, let me not even say in the draft because the Saints they're not in a position to draft a quarterback. Is there any quarterback in free agency right now that you would take over Derek Carr? And if you say guys like Justin Fields or Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, you're wrong. Those guys are all worse than Derek Carr. Maybe a fully healthy at his best Kirk Cousins is better, but at that point, you're grasping for straws. I mean, even if he is better, he is by a hair. It is not going to improve your team to switch from Derek Carr to Kirk Cousins. So, in my opinion, unless you want to just blast it up and go into a full rebuild, which is not what I think they're going to do, you keep Derek Carr for the remainder of his contract and try and draft a quarterback next season if you continue to just be terrible next year. But I don't think that's going to happen. So we're moving forward with the assumption that you keep Derek Carr. I think the Saints absolutely have to break out of their bad habits when it comes to things like the salary cap. There is no reason why a 5-win team should be $100 million over the cap. That's what the Saints were last year. I think it was like 90 something million. That's embarrassing. And a lot of it goes into these aging veteran defensive players, like Tyrann Mathieu, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan. That's not to say these guys were not really good in the past who contribute a lot, but the Saints are not in a position to contend. So why are you paying veteran players like this an exorbitant amount of money to do nothing? I mean, Cam Jordan is completely washed. I mean, no disrespect, he's a Hall of Famer, but cut him. He does not belong on the team. For I mean, bring him back to the vet minimum maybe, but he's not worth a third of what he's getting paid. And then guys like Chase Young, vanity projects, who I mean, he wasn't half bad for you, but when the result is 5 wins, there's not much you can say. So I think you'd let all of these guys go. I mean, you already traded Marshawn Lattimore, so just why not just move on completely into a new era of defense? You got young guys that I like Alontae Taylor, Brian Brzee. I like Kool-Aid McKinstry, what little I saw out of him. I think you got to bring back guys in free agency like Paulson Adebo. That's a massive name, possibly their biggest free agent on the whole team. But the way I see it is this for the Saints. You bring in the new head coach, right? Kellen Moore, offensive minded guy, obviously won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, so he's going to be a hot commodity. I'm not going to form an opinion until I see how the offense looks. The Saints are stuck. The reason I say they're in such a bad position is because I don't see a way where they can rapidly improve and win a Super Bowl, but I also don't see a path, at least this year, where they could blow it up or gut it and get a new franchise quarterback. So the Saints, at least for the next year, are going to be stuck in mediocrity. They cannot rapidly improve and contend for a Super Bowl, and they have no way to get in a new young franchise quarterback. So they're in the no man's land. And the way I see it for the Saints, the best thing you can hope for moving forward is to just try and let's talk about the draft quickly. The philosophy here, well, honestly, I think the best player available should be their focus. You could convince me of an offensive lineman, an edge rusher, maybe an interior defensive lineman. I think a receiver would be the best option here because if you do plan on bringing in a new quarterback in the future, you would want a potential number one target for him. I think Tetairoa McMillan would be the Saints' ideal option here. If I was to poll every Saints fan, I think the consensus, or at least the most wanted player, would be Tetairoa McMillan at number 8 overall, I think is where they're drafting at. So bring in Tetairoa McMillan because Chris Olave, he's had like 3 or 4 concussions in his career. Who knows his status going forward if he's gonna, I heard talks about, whether or not he was contemplating retirement. So Chris Olave is in the Tua range of, career shortening amount of concussions. So he is a massive red flag in terms of his availability. So the Saints desperately need a consistent young weapon at wide receiver. So that Tetairoa McMillan's a guy who could benefit them day one and try and make a playoff push next year, or be a dominant wide receiver one for the future quarterback moving forward. But like I said, I think the ideal season for the Saints next year would be bringing back Derek Carr, focusing on becoming a top 10 level offense, which I think if they draft McMillan, they have the personnel to do. I think Alvin Kamara only played in 14 games and had nearly 1,500 yards from scrimmage. I think he's shown that he's back, and given a good passing game to complement what he does, he could be a all-pro level player next season. Obviously, you want a healthy Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. Throw in Tetairoa McMillan in there. Derek Carr playing some really good football. I think the Saints could be a top 10 offense next season. Defensively, they were already below average this year. I expect that to continue to trend downwards, if you will. I don't think they're going to get better next year defensively, but I just hope they're not in the bottom 10, I guess you could say. So I think a top 10 offense and a average to below average defense could get the Saints to 9, maybe 10 wins next year if everything goes right. But honestly, it's looking rough. I mean, the Buccaneers are clearly ahead of the Saints right now, and they're competing with the Falcons, and the Panthers are now coming up on the rear. So it's not going to be easy to win the NFC South, but I think it is still possible. But that's all you can hope for, because if you're a fan, you never want a team to be bad, right? But if you know there's no chance of you making the playoffs, then you'd prefer like the number one overall pick, for example. But I think there is a chance of the Saints winning 9, 10 games next year if everything goes right and they remain relatively healthy. So that's the goal, right? And then next offseason, you look at different avenues, maybe trading up and get a quarterback, or maybe Derek Carr just plays really well next year and you decide to keep him for a 4th year. So there's a lot of questions to be answered. We have to just wait and see. I there's no really that there hasn't been any offseason moves yet to talk about besides the decision to bring in Kellen Moore. So we have to wait and see what they decide to do in terms of getting off all these older aging players and their contracts and filling the gaps within this team. And then obviously, hopefully, drafting a receiver. Could also be Luther Burden if it's not Tetairoa McMillan, but I think receiver should be the number one focus for the draft. So that's going to be it for my Saints video. Let me know what you think should be in their eyes, I guess. Like, what should they look to do to improve this roster, or should they just gut the roster and focus on tanking for a quarterback next draft? Who knows? But leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and we will be cooking with these uploads consistently moving forward. Thanks for watching.